All right, I know this is hard for some of you to believe, but I'm rooting for Donald Trump because I'm rooting for America, and I don't want him to fail. I really don't. I really want to be pleasantly surprised. But we're a month in, and it pains me to say this, and I hope I'm wrong. This is not going to end well. Not for Trump, not for America. This is the guy who crapped the bed on COVID. 1 million people died from COVID because of Donald Trump. Worst COVID response in the industrialized world, per capita and in sheer numbers. Right now, he is going out of his way to make our government even more unprepared for whatever is coming next. And something is coming. Things always happen. And he will crap the bed. I hope he doesn't, but that's all he knows how to do. He doesn't understand government. He doesn't know what to do with government other than destroy it. I pray I'm wrong. But right now, I don't think it's going to end well for Trump or America, and I blame the Republicans, the cowards who refuse to call him what he is. I hope I'm wrong. I remember 20 years ago, Hurricane Katrina. George W. Bush led us into an illegal war in both Afghanistan and Iraq, and he paid for it by cutting taxes for the wealthy. And within 2 years, Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans, and there was no there. There was nobody to help the thousands and thousands of Americans who drowned. And trust me, 20 years ago, nobody was saying, I told you so. He has to be impeached. We have to get rid of him now. The Washington Post reporting this morning, Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency has ordered 10% job cuts over at the Department of Transportation, which regulates Tesla. The Department of Transportation is currently looking into whether Tesla altered test results on several deadly crashes involving Tesla's self-driving car. You're all familiar with the child Elon Musk carries around on his shoulders as a prop. I've replaced his face with Lindsey Graham because it's inappropriate to show a child on any platform. And that kid was the star of a joint press conference last week in the Oval Office. You might remember the kid was picking his nose on the Resolute desk. I'm not making this up. Trump is a germaphobe, and he's getting rid of the desk for refurbishment. That's true. That is absolutely true. Now, as anyone with human decency knows, it's immoral to use your kid as a prop, especially while you're destroying lives, the way Musk is, joyfully destroying lives, firing people. And he carries around this kid to signal, hey, how bad can I be? I have a kid. It is a form, I think, of child abuse. And now the mother of that kid is trying to speak out. Her name is Claire Bosher. She's also known as Grimes. She's a Canadian singer who has had 3 kids with Elon Musk and has said she wishes Elon wouldn't use that kid the way he is, the way he's using that kid. Yesterday, Claire Bosher, the mother, put out a call for help. This is an actual tweet that she ended up taking down. Please respond about our child's medical crisis. I am sorry to do this publicly, but it is no longer acceptable to ignore this situation. This requires immediate attention. If you don't want to talk to me, can you please designate or hire someone who can so that we can move forward on solving this? This is urgent, Elon. That is from the mother of his 3 children. Character is everything. She deleted that tweet. Character is everything. Do you trust this man with your government? The Washington Post also reporting this morning that the Justice Department has deleted a database set up in the wake of the George Floyd killing that kept track of police misconduct. this is what you do when you're trying to win over the brown shirts, the thugs on the street. You let the police get away with whatever they want. In a 51-49 vote, the Senate confirmed Kash Patel to head the FBI. Patel is a former prosecutor and public defender who spreads QAnon conspiracy theories and sells COVID vaccine detox pills on the internet. He's now running the FBI. Former Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, who voted against Pete Hegseth for defense and Bobby Kennedy for Health and Human Services, voted for Kash Patel. Before casting the vote, our 83-year-old Mitch McConnell announced he would not seek re-election in 2026. With nothing to lose, he still voted for Kash Patel. What a worthless prick Mitch McConnell has always been. Alaska's Lisa Murkowski and Maine's Susan Collins were the only Republicans voting against Kash Patel. The women in the Republican Party, not really, but anyway. So, North Carolina Senator Thom Tillis, Republican, why did he vote to confirm Pete Hegseth as defense secretary when he signaled to Republicans he wouldn't? Now, you might remember there was a story in the Washington Post. It was an exclusive back at the end of January. It was by Lindsay Wise over at the Wall Street Journal. Exclusive, Tillis assured Hegseth's former sister-in-law her testimony could convince GOP senators to vote no. From the Wall Street Journal, a key witness in the contentious Senate confirmation of Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth was assured by Senator Thom Tillis, Republican from North Carolina, that her sworn statement would carry weight in last week's vote and could persuade Republican senators to oppose the nominee, according to people familiar with the events. Senator Tillis personally assured Danielle Hegseth in a call on January 19th, witnessed by two other people, that if she signed the statement testifying that she believed her former brother-in-law, Pete Hegseth, was an alcoholic abuse problem and was abusive to his second wife, it would carry weight and potentially move 3 votes, his own, along with the votes of Senators Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski, those people said. What happened? Senator Tillis voted. He got this woman to sign a sworn affidavit, jeopardize her life, and then he turns his back on her, doesn't show the affidavit to anybody, and votes for Pete Hegseth. What happened? Well, from Vanity Fair, this is Gabe Sherman, February 19th, 2025. Vanity Fair, they're scared shitless. This is the headline. They're scared shitless. The threat of political violence informing Trump's grip on Congress. This is by Gabe Sherman over at Vanity Fair. Political survival is one reason, he writes, that people like Thom Tillis went ahead and voted for Pete Hegseth. Political survival is one reason. Senate and House Republicans know Trump will orchestrate the running of a primary challenger backed by Elon Musk's unlimited resources if a member defies him. But this is not the whole story of Republican subservience to the president. In private, Republicans talk about their fear that Trump might incite his MAGA followers to commit political violence against them if they don't rubber stamp his actions. More from Gabriel Sherman in Vanity Fair. They're scared shitless about death threats and Gestapo-like stuff, a former member of Trump's first administration tells me. According to one source with direct knowledge of the events, North Carolina Senator Thom Tillis told people that the FBI warned him about, quote-unquote, credible death threats when he was considering voting against Pete Hegseth's nomination for defense secretary. Tillis ultimately provided the crucial 50th vote to confirm the former Fox and Friends host to lead the Pentagon. More from Gabriel Sherman over at the Vanity Fair. According to the source, Tillis has said that if people want to understand Trump, they should read the 2006 book Snakes in Suits: When Psychopaths Go to Work. When asked for a comment for this story, a spokesperson for Tillis said it was false that the senator had recommended the book in that capacity. The FBI said it had no comment. Trump Media, his company, is suing a Brazilian judge hours before the judge brought charges against Jair Bolsonaro, the former authoritarian president of Brazil, known as the Trump of the tropics. Jair Bolsonaro was charged this week by that very same judge with attempting to kill Brazil's current president, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, and the vice president. You might remember Bolsonaro, Trump of the tropics, ran for re-election in 2022 and lost to Lula, who was sworn in on January 1st, 2023. A week later, Bolsonaro's supporters stormed Brazil's National Congress building, Brazil's Supreme Court, and Brazil's presidential palace as Bolsonaro, just like Trump, spread lies about voter fraud. In a major crackdown in Brazil, Bolsonaro has been banned from Brazilian politics until 2030. Bolsonaro, like Donald Trump, didn't attend the inauguration of his successor. Instead, during the final days of his presidency, Bolsonaro flew to Florida to visit Donald Trump, and he spent 3 months in America. During his time in America, Bolsonaro continued to cultivate relations with the far right. He met with Steve Bannon. He spoke at a Turning Point USA conference hosted by white nationalist Charlie Kirk. That was on February 3rd, 2023, and it was held at Trump's Doral Hotel. And then Bolsonaro spoke at CPAC's annual meeting in March of 2023 in Maryland. Reuters reported that the audience, CPAC, that's the big conservative conference. Reuters reported that the audience of conservatives cheered Bolsonaro's pro-gun, anti-vax, and anti-abortion message. This just weeks after his supporters stormed Brazil's Supreme Court, Brazil's National Assembly, and the presidential palace as Bolsonaro continued to spread lies about a stolen election. Well, CPAC's big annual conference got underway Thursday, and Vice President J.D. Vance got a standing ovation kicking it off. I'll talk about his speech in a second, but after his speech, he talked with Mercedes Schlapp, the wife of CPAC's chairman, Matt Schlapp. In his interview before the CPAC crowd, Vance told Matt Schlapp's wife, Mercedes, that Republicans need to do a better job reaching out to men. His exact words. And Matt Schlapp was in the audience. Nobody tittered. Vance said to Mercedes Schlapp, that would be the wife of Matt Schlapp, quote, "Don't allow this broken culture to send you a message that you're a bad person because you're a man," unquote. Hey, nobody in our culture is saying men are bad. We're saying rapists are bad. We're saying bullies are bad. We're saying closeted gay Republicans who beat up on the LGBTQ community while constantly getting caught sexually assaulting other men. Those are bad men. Anyway, J.D. Vance is telling all this to Mercedes Schlapp, who is married to Matt Schlapp, and the entire crowd of bad men sitting in the audience, they just ignored the gay elephant in the room. Vance said to Mercedes Schlapp, while her husband Matt Schlapp was in the audience, quote, "Our culture sends a message to young men that you should suppress every masculine urge," unquote. Not every masculine urge, JD, just the masculine urge to grab another man's junk without permission. What's this? This is from the Rappahannock News. from Julia Shanahan, February 19th, 2025. Let's see. Headline, political figure Matt Schlapp allegedly assaulted customer at Sperryville restaurant. No charges filed. Oh, that's interesting. Let's go big here. Matt Schlapp, chairman of the American Conservative Union, was the subject of a disturbance at the Black Twig restaurant in Sperryville on February 8th when he allegedly grabbed another patron's genitals, according to a report prepared by the Rappahannock County Sheriff's Office. Black Twig owner Daniel Gleason called the sheriff's office at 11:10 p.m. that evening, according to the report, quote, stating that a patron had just assaulted another customer. Schlapp, 57, was the person accused, according to the call for service summary report from the sheriff's office. No charges were filed. More from the Rappahannock News. The alleged incident at the Black Twig is not the first time allegations have been made about sexually related conduct by Schlapp. According to previous news reports, in the past 8 years, there have been 3 other such allegations. Schlapp has maintained his innocence in each instance, and he has not been charged with any of them. I think there have been more than 3. This is from the Washington Post 2 years ago. CPAC urged to probe more sexual misconduct claims against Chair Matt Schlapp. This is from yesterday's New York Times. They're reporting on it, finally. On one occasion, the Washington Post reported Mr. Schlapp was accused of stripping to his underwear and rubbing against another person without his consent during a 2022 fundraising trip to South Florida. In 2017, a CPAC employee accused Mr. Schlapp of trying to kiss him against his wishes, the newspaper reported, citing information from this guy's lawsuit. That would be Carlton Huffman over there. You might remember that in 2023, the beginning of 2023, Carlton Huffman accused Matt Schlapp of pounding his junk while they were working together for Herschel Walker down in Georgia. Carlton Huffman, a Republican, was supposed to pick up Matt Schlapp, and Matt got into the car and started pounding on his junk. But he denies it, and Mercedes, they deny it, and they hire an exorcist. They said I'm not making that up, they said there are demons who are haunting the CPAC offices. This is from Metro Weekly. I will continue to read this to you. Metro Weekly. It's by John Riley, September 12, 2017. Anti-LGBTQ activist Mercedes Schlapp joins White House press office. Conservative activist takes the view that advances in LGBTQ rights infringe on religious Americans' liberties. Yeah, this is from Metro Weekly. She worked in the first Trump administration. Given her professional background, it is not shocking to learn that Schlapp has frequently taken the conservative position, arguing against expansions of LGBTQ rights, instead preferring to paint Christians as a victimized class of people under attack by socially liberal policies. You mean grabbing their junk? As such, she, like her husband, Matt Schlapp, has been a vocal proponent of religious freedom legislation or executive actions that would provide exemptions for people who wish to refuse goods and services to others based on the seller's personal objections to same-sex marriage or homosexuality in general. That would be Mercedes Schlapp, the wife of Matt Schlapp. Anyway, Vance spoke with Mercedes Schlapp, and he went on to tell the CPAC crowd that for the first time in 3 years, Trump is bringing peace to Europe, whether they want it or not. And Europe doesn't want Trump's definition of peace because to Europe, it's eerily reminiscent of Neville Chamberlain's September 30th, 1938, Peace in Our Time speech, where England agreed to allow Hitler to grab Czechoslovakia's Sudetenland without anyone consulting Czechoslovakia. But certainly, Donald Trump wouldn't hold peace talks over the fate of Ukraine without allowing Ukraine at the table. He wouldn't make the same mistake Neville Chamberlain would. Yeah, he did. During his speech before CPAC, Vance questioned the wisdom of America defending Europe if we no longer have shared values. He's saying that we don't share the same values as Europe. And Vance singled out, in his CPAC speech, he singled out the German government for waging war on free speech by silencing members of the far-right Alternative for Germany party, made up of neo-Nazis, Nazi apologists. Some say this party could be the runner-up in Sunday's snap election. Now, because of Germany's Nazi past, political parties, even the conservative ones, have agreed to establish a firewall where they refuse to form a coalition with any party that echoes the policies of Adolf Hitler, like the Alternative for Germany party. But J.D. Vance and Elon Musk openly support the Alternative for Germany party. So J.D. Vance sees the firewall as suppression of speech. Well, don't political parties have the freedom of speech to form a firewall? J.D.? Le Monde reporting hundreds of thousands of Germans have taken to the streets in the past week to show support for the firewall that keeps the Alternative for Germany party out of their government. Former Tory Prime Minister John Major, conservative, he became Prime Minister after Margaret Thatcher, conservative Prime Minister John Major, like most of Europe and Great Britain, is appalled by J.D. Vance's speech, the one he gave in Munich last week. John Major said J.D. Vance should be lecturing Putin about free speech, not Europe. John Major said, quote, "In Mr. Putin's Russia, people who disagree with him disappear or die or flee the country, or on a statistically unlikely level, fall out of high windows somewhere in Moscow." John Major went on to say, quote, "To lecture the West about democracy seems really rather odd. He should be doing that in Moscow." But for MAGA, but for Elon Musk and J.D. Vance, it's not about protecting all speech. It's about just protecting hate speech while silencing your enemies. They only want to protect hate speech. For example, Elon Musk said Bill Whitaker of 60 Minutes deserves, quote unquote, a long prison sentence for his interview with Kamala Harris in the lead up to the November election. You might recall Donald Trump, Mr. Freedom of Speech, is suing CBS News for $10 billion, claiming he suffered irreparable harm after 60 Minutes ran what he called a heavily edited interview with Kamala Harris that made her seem smarter than she actually is. Donald Trump refused to take part in an interview with 60 Minutes after being told they would fact-check him. Fact-checking is not protected by freedom of speech in MAGA world. And Trump's new head of the FCC demanded to see transcripts and unedited raw video of the CBS interview, the CBS News 60 Minutes interview with Kamala Harris. CBS turned it over to the FCC and made it public, and I recommend you read the transcripts. The lawsuit is meritless. But it doesn't matter. This, J.D. Vance, and I guess they didn't teach this to you at Yale Law School, this, by its very definition, is government suppression of free speech. This is a violation of the First Amendment. The First Amendment is about protecting people's speech from government censorship. That lawsuit that Donald Trump filed, as well as the FCC going so far as to say it would block CBS's merger with another company, the FCC says it's going to block CBS's merger because of the Kamala Harris interview. By its very definition, that is a violation of the First Amendment. But J.D. Vance at CPAC saying we don't have shared values with Europe, especially Germany, because they censor neo-Nazi political parties. Like I said, Trump and his ilk hate freedom of speech. They only love hate speech. That's all they want to protect. They want to protect the right to be wrong. Whenever you correct a MAGA Republican, they accuse you of, you're canceling me, you're censoring. How am I canceling you? I'm just pointing out that you're wrong, your facts are wrong. Censorship. And when you say, hey, I don't feel like supporting a podcaster who uses the N-word, censorship, freedom of speech, cancel culture, they only protect hate speech. Trump just appointed Ed Martin as the Washington, D.C. federal prosecutor. Martin is a MAGA attack dog, and he launched an investigation into language, words spoken by Democratic Congressman Robert Garcia, who said during a CNN interview, quote, what the American public wants is for us to bring actual weapons to this bar fight, unquote. He also called Elon Musk a dick. So I always say people on our side should watch their words. And obviously, Congressman Garcia doesn't choose his words carefully, but no harm, no foul. He gave an opening, though, for the new D.C. U.S. Attorney, Martin, to send him a letter, quote, this sounds to me like a threat to Mr. Musk, an appointed representative, President Donald Trump, who you call a dick, and government staff who work for him. Their concerns have led to this inquiry. So Mr. Freedom of Speech, Donald Trump, has ordered this new D.C. attorney to intimidate Garcia, and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer is being investigated by the Justice Department because after Roe was overturned, Senator Schumer said the Supreme Court will pay a price for this. And MAGA world is saying, you see, they're just as bad as we are. You think he might have meant a political price for this? Well, February 24th marks the third anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The Financial Times reporting the White House vetoed a G7 statement marking the anniversary. They're all about freedom of speech, but they didn't like a statement marking the anniversary of the invasion of Ukraine. According to the Financial Times, the Trump White House objected to language in the statement that referred to Russia as the aggressor in the war. Last year, the G7's statement read, this was when Biden was still president, we call on Russia to immediately cease its war of aggression and completely and unconditionally withdraw its military forces from the internationally recognized territory of Ukraine. The Guardian reporting the Trump White House also blocking similar language in a UN declaration marking the third anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Do you have any doubt they were the aggressor? On Wednesday, Donald Trump called Volodymyr Zelensky, the duly elected president of Ukraine, quote unquote, a dictator. Zelensky finds the hardest part about Trump calling him a dictator is figuring out if that was intended to be a compliment. Trump himself declared, quote, it's good to be the king, after he used his power as president to reverse New York City's congestion pricing. Some of his associates have picked up on this, adding the crown emoji to their tweets when referring to Trump. During a Black History Month ceremony in the East Wing on Thursday, Trump, out of nowhere, asked the crowd, quote, should I run again? You tell me. And the audience of supplicants responded yes and began chanting 4 more years. The unitary executive theory is a belief that the president has unilateral control over the entire executive branch, as well as the agencies contained within. If you read Project 2025, you'll see that the plan is to run the entire executive branch, every cabinet and sub-cabinet level agency, through the Oval Office to concentrate the power in one man. It's why Donald Trump signed an executive order this week to gain more control over independent agencies like the Federal Election Commission, the FCC, the Federal Trade Commission, the Securities and Exchange Commission. These are agencies established through acts of Congress that are independent of the president, even though they are housed inside the executive branch. Their commissioners are appointed by the president, but they have to be confirmed by the Senate, which has oversight. The Washington Post reporting this morning that Donald Trump is about to sign an executive order dissolving the Postal Service's Oversight Board and fold it into the Commerce Department. The Post Office is a quasi-government agency. It's part government, part independent. The Post reporting the board has hired outside counsel to sue Trump if he goes through with the plan to gain control over the Postal Service, with most legal experts saying such a move would be unconstitutional. Yes, let's put Donald Trump in charge of our mail-in ballots. Donald Trump, he is signaling with all five fingers that he wants a three-peat, a third term. But he can't count, so he's raising all five fingers. But he's talking three-peat. First it's a joke until it's not. One of the proponents of unitary executive theory is Steve Bannon, who spoke at CPAC on Thursday. During his speech, Bannon got the crowd to chant, "We want Trump," after Bannon said Trump should run for a third term. The crowd was a little light since Bannon had to follow Elon Musk, who lit up the room, literally brandishing a chainsaw. And after Musk spoke, the crowd began leaving by the time Steve Bannon took the stage. Musk intentionally positioned himself before Bannon. He wanted to blow the room out so Bannon couldn't follow him, to punish Bannon, who earlier in the week called Elon Musk, quote, a parasitic illegal immigrant. He is an illegal immigrant. He came to America on a student visa, but didn't go to Stanford. He lied and started working in Silicon Valley. He was an illegal immigrant, and his citizenship should be revoked. A month ago, Bannon called Musk, quote unquote, a truly evil person, unquote. Again, not sure if that was an attack on the man's character or high praise, since it was coming from Elon Musk. Musk, during his CPAC speech, addressed the subject of the war in Ukraine, asking the crowd, quote, how many more years is this supposed to go on? What exactly are they dying for? I'll tell you what, for the biggest graft machine in my entire life. He added, the amount of money that has been taken in graft and bribery is disgusting. He's accusing Zelensky of being corrupt. He goes on to say, these poor guys are being fed into a meat grinder for money, and it needs to stop, says the man who was feeding our civil service into the meat grinder to pay for his tax cut. Musk traffics in lies. He has no evidence to back up these charges of graft in Ukraine. Republican Josh Hawley has called for an inspector general for Ukraine to monitor how the $174 billion we've given so far is being spent. But Musk doesn't like inspector generals. He doesn't want anybody looking into possible graft and fraud in Ukraine. Why? Miles Klee, writing in Rolling Stone magazine this week, said our very own FBI director, Kash Patel, gave several interviews over the past couple of years where he accused Elon Musk of amassing his fortune through government contracts. Rolling Stone says our new FBI director, Kash Patel, recently called Elon Musk America's largest defense contractor. Rolling Stone had to correct that statement. Our new FBI director is incorrect, says Rolling Stone. They write that while Musk's SpaceX has $22 billion in government contracts, it's not quite our largest defense contractor. But I don't think Mr. Government Efficiency accusing Ukraine of wasting 175 billion American taxpayer dollars. I don't think he wants an inspector general looking into his defense contracts, his satellite, where the money for his satellite hookups actually go. The point is, Musk doesn't traffic in truths. This is the guy who owns Twitter. Studies show he is the biggest spreader of misinformation on the internet. He doesn't traffic in truth. He only repeats what sounds good. On Thursday, Musk, for example, told the CPAC crowd, he repeated this lie that Social Security is sending out checks to millions of Americans falsely claiming to be over the age of 100. This despite Trump's appointee to head Social Security keeps correcting him. Doesn't matter if it's true. It gets a laugh. This is like a comedian's mindset. Just tell the joke. If it gets a laugh, you tell it. On the subject of Ukraine, Donald Trump attacked Vladimir Zelensky, saying, quote, he better move fast or he is not going to have a country left, unquote. Trump then called for Zelensky to lift martial law in Ukraine so Trump can have it. Give me your martial law. Well, there is martial law in Ukraine. I wonder why. After the invasion, Zelensky declared martial law. It tends to happen when your country is invaded. Trump lied and said Zelensky is, quote unquote, a dictator. Called Zelensky a dictator, not Putin. Zelensky. He said Zelensky's approval rating sits at 5%. He said nobody likes Zelensky in Ukraine. Well, Trump is a liar. Zelensky's approval rating sits at 50%, possibly higher. So yes, elections have been postponed due to the invasion, but a majority of Ukrainians, according to all polling, are okay with the elections being postponed, the same way the British people were okay with elections being postponed during World War II. Hard to have elections when you've been invaded. 6 million Ukrainians have fled Ukraine since the invasion. Another 6 million have been uprooted and forced to take temporary shelter in other parts of Ukraine. Hard to hold elections. What do you do about eastern Ukraine currently occupied by the Russians? Do they get to vote? But all of a sudden, Trump is Mr. Pro-Democracy. People should be allowed to vote. Yeah. Trump said of Zelensky, quote, I like him personally, but it is the leadership that allowed the war to go on. The leadership of Ukraine. Not the leadership of Russia. Not Putin. Zelensky. Trump said of Zelensky, and this is the problem having an inveterate liar as our commander-in-chief. Trump said of Zelensky, quote, he should have never started it. He could have made a deal, unquote. He should have never started it. Trump literally accused Zelensky of starting the war. Not surprising to hear this from a man with 30 credible sexual assault allegations against him. And E. Jean Carroll. What does he have to do? Pay her $80 million because a jury ruled that he was guilty of defaming her after he sexually assaulted her? Not surprising that a man with at least 30 credible sexual assault allegations would say Ukraine started it. During Thursday's White House press conference, National Security Advisor and supplicant Trump toady Mike Waltz refused to say who is responsible for the war in Ukraine. Asked if he or Trump believes Putin's a dictator, Waltz refused to answer. He was asked, Trump just called Zelensky a dictator. Do you believe Putin's a dictator? Our national security advisor refused to answer that question. Waltz then defended Trump, saying, quote, if there's anybody in this world that can go toe-to-toe, they're so macho. If there's anybody in this world that can go toe-to-toe with Putin, it's Donald J. Trump. Yeah, toe-to-toe. Yeah. Wasn't it his toes that kept him out of Vietnam? Mr. Toe-to-toe. By toe-to-toe, he means the tango with Putin. Putin leading with a rose in his mouth. Waltz said Zelensky needs to stop, quote-unquote, bad-mouthing Trump and sign a deal handing over $500 billion worth of Ukraine's natural resources to America. This is what's going on now. We're literally saying to Ukraine, if you want us to defend you, you've got to give us $500 billion worth of your oil and your rare earth. Hey, at least it's honest. At least it's honest. As you know, Russia and the United States met in Saudi Arabia on Wednesday to begin peace talks over the war in Ukraine. Zelensky was not invited. The same way Czechoslovakia wasn't invited when Hitler and Chamberlain divided up Europe. The same way Africa wasn't invited when the great powers divided Africa up. Zelensky isn't happy about that. He said, quote, decisions on how to end the war in Ukraine cannot be made without Ukraine, nor can any conditions be imposed. Quote, we were not invited to this Russian-American meeting in Saudi Arabia. It was a surprise for us, I think for many others as well. J.D. Vance, very protective, very tough, except around other bullies. J.D. Vance said of Zelensky's comments, quote, disgraceful. He said, you're not going to change Trump's mind, certainly not by attacking him publicly in the media. How dare you criticize or even question mein Führer? This is Nazi shit. This is Franco Mussolini. This is Bolsonaro. This is stuff you see Pinochet. You know, we're not special. What's going on is transnational, transhistorical. We're not special what's happening in our country. U.S. envoy Keith Kellogg met with Zelensky in Ukraine, but their joint press conference was canceled at the last minute. Didn't go well. Britain's Labour Prime Minister says he's willing to send British troops to Ukraine as peacekeepers. Keir Starmer heads to Washington next week to meet with Trump, with Emmanuel Macron, the president of France. France and Britain are upset that despite the EU and Great Britain chipping in just as much cash as the United States to defend Ukraine, like Ukraine, they haven't been invited to the peace talks either. Chris Patten is the former chairman of the British Conservative Party. He told Nicholas Kristof of the New York Times yesterday, we have Trump and his oligarchy of ignorant shoeshiners vandalizing the network of organizations, agreements, and values largely put in place by America since the Second World War, which have given most of us, including America, on the whole, an extraordinary degree of peace and prosperity. I love America and was once happy to regard its president as leader of the free world. Not any longer. Where are the American values that I used to admire? They're being stolen from us by a plurality. But J.D. Vance telling CPAC Thursday that immigrants are the greatest threat to Europe. I wonder if J.D. Vance was talking about Andrew Tate and his brother Tristan, who isn't allowed to leave Romania after being charged with human trafficking, rape, money laundering, and forming an organized crime group. Andrew Tate is also wanted in Great Britain. The Guardian reporting that 4 women who say they are victims of Andrew Tate have spoken out against Trump's envoy, Richard Grenell, who, according to the Financial Times, called on Romania to lift travel restrictions on the Tate brothers. Why not? Trump pardons 1,500 January 6ers. This is politically expedient to come to the aid of the Tate brothers. The BBC calls Andrew Tate, he's a former kickboxing champion. They call him a self-proclaimed misogynist who gained a loyal following in the MAGA sphere after being kicked off the reality show Big Brother for assaulting a woman. Andrew Tate has millions of social media followers and endorsed Trump in the last election. The Daily Beast reporting that Trump says he regrets not forcing the Senate to confirm Matt Gaetz for Attorney General. Gaetz was forced to withdraw his nomination after a congressional ethics report brought to light serious and credible allegations that Gaetz, as a member of Congress, trafficked young, possibly minors, young women for sex and drug-fueled parties. Who's that behind Matt Gaetz? This is when they were sending him around as the nominee for Attorney General. Who's standing behind him? Oh, look, that's Jason Miller standing behind Matt Gaetz. Remember Jason Miller? He is right now a senior advisor to Donald Trump in the White House, and he was an advisor to Trump during the first Trump administration, but he had to go. During that first stint, while married, Jason Miller fathered a child with another woman, and he had to leave the White House. She was working at the White House. But he's back in the White House because he's a good man. He's a good man. According to Snopes, reporter Yashar Ali had spoken to 3 women who corroborated a story that Jason Miller had once impregnated a stripper who was forced to go to the hospital after Jason Miller allegedly snuck an abortion pill in her smoothie and she began to bleed out. According to reporting, some witnesses say that Jason Miller wanted her to get an abortion. She wouldn't do it, so he slipped an abortion pill, allegedly, in a smoothie, and she got seriously ill. That's according to Snopes and according to Yashar Ali, who are reporting what 3 women said, corroborating another woman's claim. That would be Jason Miller, not to be confused with Stephen Miller, White House Deputy Chief of Staff, who also spoke to reporters on Thursday, telling everyone the death penalty is back, law and order is back, unquote. Law and order's back, of course, unless you're the mayor of New York City charged with accepting bribes from a foreign government, then law and order isn't back. Law and order is back unless you're the richest man in the world who wants access to our nation's tax returns without even being able to pass an FBI background check. Elon Musk can't pass an FBI background check, and he can't pass Shin Bet's security check in Israel. By the way, the Trump administration changed its mind late Thursday. Elon Musk and his Department of Government Efficiency droogies won't be able to access our tax returns. He was going to get all our tax returns, and then at the last minute, the Treasury Department said no. Wonder why? Could it maybe be that Trump doesn't want Elon Musk and his droogies seeing his tax returns? In 1992, the Internal Revenue Service workforce stood at 114,000. Today, we have roughly 80,000 people working at the IRS. Problem is, since 1992, our population has increased by 74 million Americans, with 35,000 fewer IRS employees. The Internal Revenue Service is notoriously understaffed. In June of 2023, Business Insider reported on a Harvard study showing that the United States government receives $4 for every $1 the IRS spends auditing the richest 10% in our country. In other words, when you hire more people to work over at the IRS, government is more efficient. You save money. You make money. Business Insider reporting that America's top 1% refuse to pay roughly $163 billion a year because they know the IRS lacks the resources to audit them. According to reporting in the New York Times, Trump has hundreds of LLCs, and it takes years for the IRS to finish his audits because, why? The entire purpose of just one LLC is to hide money from the government. Imagine what a maze of confusion hundreds of LLCs are for the understaffed IRS. President Biden's Inflation Reduction Act called for spending $80 billion over the next decade to hire more IRS workers and upgrade the computer systems. Because understaffed, the IRS is more likely to audit poor people over the earned income tax credit than they are billionaires. Bureaucracies, by their very nature, want to put numbers on the board, so they go after the low-hanging fruit. It's easy to audit somebody over the earned income tax credit than it is to go after Jeff Bezos, who some years pays zero taxes. But Trump seizes on this truth. This is what Republicans are very good at. They can take a truth and then pervert it. So the fact is that poor people are more likely to be audited by the IRS because of people like Trump, but he seizes on this truth. And instead of blaming Republicans for defunding the IRS and forcing the agents to go after poor people instead of people like Trump, instead of telling the truth about why poor people are more likely to be audited, he calls for job cuts at the IRS. He says, quote, "Are you sick of being targeted and harassed by the IRS? Well, maybe it's time that somebody audited them for a change. How about it's time somebody audited the richest 1% for more than change?" About how much did I say here? $163 billion a year. That's what they do. So, Chainsaw Musk. On Thursday, the IRS fired nearly 7,000 employees right before tax season. That doesn't make the government efficient. It doesn't save money firing 7,000 IRS employees. It costs us money. As I said earlier, for every dollar you spend on the IRS, you get back 4. This isn't about making government efficient. It's not about cutting costs. It's protecting the 1% from having to pay taxes. On Monday, Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth blamed the Biden administration for him owing the IRS $33,518.16. Of course, it's the government's fault that he didn't pay his taxes. He got a letter. Pete Hegseth makes millions off Fox News, but because he's been married so many times and he has so many children, a lot of that money goes out the door. And he has to pay settlements, non-disclosure agreements with women who accuse him of rape. Dear Peter B. and Jennifer A. Hegseth, we're auditing your federal income tax return and Form 10. You owe a balance of $33,558.16. Hegseth tweeted this out. Like, look what the Biden administration is doing to me. He tweets, literally tweeted this. Of course, the outgoing Biden IRS rushed an audit of the incoming Secretary of Defense. Total sham. The party of norms and decency strikes again. We will never back down. How about you just pay your effing taxes? You really think, does anybody really believe that Joe Biden ordered an audit on when you owe close to $35,000, you're going to get a note from the IRS. That's how it usually works. But it's the government's fault that this alcoholic didn't pay his taxes. He's got money for strippers, money to be face down in the backseat of a car puking, according to several eyewitnesses and a sister-in-law, an ex-sister-in-law. Money for that, but no money for the government he claims to love so much. Howard Lutnick cleared the final Senate hurdle to become Commerce Secretary. Lutnick is worth close to $1 billion, and according to his disclosures, he is the head of or associated with nearly 1,000 separate companies. What a proficient entrepreneur. 1,000 companies. Wow. Why does he have 1,000 companies? Same reason Trump does. You don't have to pay taxes. Lutnick told Fox News after his confirmation that Trump plans to replace the Internal Revenue Service with an external revenue service. Lutnick said the entire government could be funded through tariffs. He perpetuates the lie that foreign governments pay tariffs. Consumers pay Americans pay the tariffs. It's a tax. Now, we need $7 trillion a year to keep the government going. If Trump placed a 25, and this could never happen, but go with me on this. If we set up an external revenue service and Trump placed a 25% tariff on all foreign imports, at best, it would bring in $1 trillion a year. But that's not going to happen. It's impossible. That would set off a trade war, bringing the global economy, including ours, to its knees. Not going to happen. This is just an excuse not to pay you will say whatever you want not to give up your own money. These people are craven. They're just the worst people in the world. Trump is a flytrap. He gets the worst people in the world stuck with him. Then Lutnick, who may be one of the worst people in the world, and his Commerce Department head, he would be in charge of the post office if this plan goes through. Lutnick said, quote, "We have almost $4 trillion of entitlements." And then he said, "You know Social Security is wrong. You know Medicare and Medicaid is wrong." Not a good idea to go on Fox News and tell people what you're really thinking. And this is why he didn't become Treasury Secretary. Trump really can't stand him because he talks too much. He tells people what the plan is. In the days leading up to the election, Lutnick told Fox News vaccines aren't safe, and he repeated the debunked claim linking vaccines to autism. Le Monde reporting that Donald Trump Jr., he's part of a new investment group, and he is helping to finance the Enhanced Games. The Enhanced Games, which are scheduled for later this year. A host city hasn't yet been settled on. What are the Enhanced Games? I'm not making this up. It would be an Olympics for athletes who juice. It would take the chains off performance-enhancing drugs, allowing competitors to shoot whatever they want into their systems. Odd that Donald Trump Jr. would be in support of something like that. I can't imagine Donald Trump Jr. approving of drugs. He seems so sober-minded to me. So the enhanced games, what are we talking about here? The entire medicine cabinet that has been banned by the World Anti-Doping Agency. Anabolic steroids, blood doping, growth hormones, even gene editing would be allowed. These are, transhuman athletes, essentially. But it's the vaccines that aren't safe. We have to worry about the vaccines. Anabolic steroids, blood doping, growth hormones, gene editing, perfectly safe. It's those vaccines. It's the measles vaccines. Republicans are afraid of shots, unless those shots are performance-enhancing drugs. Republicans are afraid of shots unless they're coming out of the barrel of a gun. Those shots they're okay with. You might remember Don Jr. visited Venice in December, and cosmopolitan that he is, like anyone who has a chance to go to Venice, he went duck hunting. How romantic. Well, Italian prosecutors announced Tuesday they have opened an investigation to Donald Trump Jr. killing an endangered duck on his Venice hunting trip. Well, I hope he didn't catch the avian flu. I'm sure he's fully vaccinated. The Wall Street Journal editorial board slamming Bobby Kennedy for, quote, spreading doubt and confusion on the measles vaccine. This is the Wall Street Journal. This is Rupert Murdoch's newspaper. The Wall Street Journal wrote that 3 out of every 1,000 children who gets the measles dies from it. The Journal said that in the year 2000, measles was entirely eradicated in the United States. And then the Journal said, but thanks to people like Bobby Kennedy, more and more Americans are opting out of the vaccine for their children. And this, of course, might explain the outbreak of measles in West Texas, now rising to 58 patients. 13 patients had to be hospitalized. It's the worst outbreak in 30 years. We almost had it eradicated. 18% of children in Gaines County, Texas, where the measles are spreading, 18% of the children there are unvaccinated for measles. It's one of the highest numbers of unvaccinated kids in the state. So we eradicated measles 25 years ago, but thanks to people like Bobby Kennedy and Howard Lutnick, measles are coming back. Here is an actual photograph today of the new head of the Department of Health and Human Services, Bobby Kennedy, teaching doctors how to perform heart surgery without wearing a mask. Granted, he's not a doctor, but he knows how not to wear a mask. So we should listen to him because he knows how not to put a mask on. So doctors should listen to him. Bobby Kennedy addressed people working for him over at the Department of Health and Human Services yesterday. Kennedy said he's creating a commission examining, among other things, child vaccines. He also canceled an important meeting that discusses vaccines. It's just reported that there was a meeting scheduled with top scientists about vaccines. He canceled it. Meanwhile, the Kennedy Library, which is home to his father's and President Kennedy's papers, the Kennedy Library in Massachusetts was temporarily shut down on Wednesday due to Elon Musk's budget cuts. It reopened. The FDA's top food inspector, Jim Jones, quit to protest the mass firing of his agency's chemical safety experts. This is the guy who inspects our food for bad chemicals. He quit because of Bobby Kennedy. Jim Jones said of Kennedy, quote, the secretary's comments impugning the integrity of the food staff, asserting they are corrupt based on falsities, is a disservice to everyone. The Washington Post reporting that the Trump administration was about to destroy 160 million COVID tests to cut costs. They bought I think it was $500 million worth of free COVID tests that were going to be distributed, but the Department of Government Efficiency said it would be more efficient to destroy these tests than give them out to American citizens. Well, the Washington Post reporting that within 24 hours of that story breaking, the Trump administration reversed course. The United States Department of Agriculture is now trying to rehire all those bird flu experts they fired. They fired experts on zoonotic leaps that viruses make from animals to humans. They fired those people in the middle of an avian flu epidemic that's hit like 100 million chickens and is spreading to cattle and people. And the Huffington Post calculating that since Trump's return to the Oval Office, it cost the American taxpayers nearly $11 million so far for this turd to play golf. The Washington Post reporting Trump cut a $200 million program that provided legal guidance to unaccompanied minors coming across our border. Yeah, why would you want to tell a frightened child what their rights are? Why would you want to give free legal advice to a terrified child? $200 million cut, but they saved $200 million, right? They saved it. And what are they going to do with that saved money? Same exact amount of money, $200 million, is going to be spent on something way more important for the border. Semaphore reporting the Department of Homeland Security will spend $200 million on commercials warning undocumented immigrants, we will hunt you down. That's what we're spending $200 million on, to terrify undocumented immigrants who are watching television. The United States is facing record cold, with nearly 75% of Americans experiencing below freezing temperatures this week. USA Today reporting the Central Plains and states along the Canadian border hitting wind chill of minus 30 to minus 60 below. And The Guardian reports 40% of Americans are refusing to spend money at stores that don't share their political beliefs. Are you going to participate in the Great American Shop Out, where Americans just stop shopping for a day? Leave a comment. Are you going to stop participating in the economy for a day to scare the oligarchs? Let me know in the comments section. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. Thank you for listening to me. I hope I made some order for you out of this intentional chaos. I hope I succeeded in telling you what's happening, what's important, and what to ignore. I know it's overwhelming. I know. Focus on the pain points. Who is going to be hurt by this? If you're not in pain from any of this, go help the people who are. When you hear the news, ask yourself, who's going to be in pain because of this? It'll keep your head on straight. For most of you right now, this isn't real. For the undocumented Americans, this is real. For the LGBTQ community, this is real. For women, this is real. For people who work in our federal government, this is real. Where is this real and where is this just manufactured chaos? I'm going to try to help myself and you sort it all out. If you enjoyed any of this, please share it. Please like this episode so I remain in your feed. Subscribe to my newsletter. Subscribe to this channel. My schedule is erratic. I was going to do a show yesterday, and I was overwhelmed by the news. I couldn't see through the forest. So I just said, you know what? Take a day off and read more and sort things out. I'm trying to sort this out. So hit the notifications bell. That way you'll know when I'm doing a show. I have been clipping. It's harder to find shows like this, so I'm clipping parts of the show. So maybe you'll share some of it or rewatch some of the stuff that I think is important. All right. Thank you to Bob and Mila for keeping the conversation civil in the chat room. I read all your comments. If you're a longtime commenter, you know I read everything. If I made a mistake, please correct me. Thank you. No show tomorrow. I may do a show Saturday. There'll either be a show Saturday or Sunday. I don't know. But, okay. Hang in there. Stay angry. Be angry and channel that anger into action. Peaceful action. Protest, write letters, call your government officials. This is unacceptable. It's unacceptable. All of it is unacceptable.